What's up and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. This is Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us. This podcast is powered by Stick and Ball TV, the baseball and softball streaming platform. If you haven't checked it out already, there are hundreds of videos and a ton of great content waiting just for you. And the cool part, it's all updated weekly. Check it out at stickandball.tv or on the Stick and Ball TV mobile app. Today we have on Jamey Carroll, defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jamey grew up in Evansville, Indiana, and graduated from the University of Evansville, and after earning All-American honors at shortstop, he was drafted in the 14th round by the Montreal Expos. Jamey made his Major League debut in 2002, and in 2004, he scored the Expos' final run in their history before moving to Washington, D.C. Besides playing with the Expos and Nationals franchise, Jamey also played for the Rockies, Indians, Dodgers, Twins, and Royals franchises. Jamey retired and got right into coaching in 2015 as a Pirates front office assistant. So on the show, we discuss what his role with being a defensive coordinator entails. We go over how coaching has changed since he played and what he has implemented. And Jamey also coaches his son's 13U team. So we have discussions about the big leagues all the way down to youth baseball. Jamey also provides us a ton of drills that we can take to practice tomorrow. Here is Jamey Carroll. Jamey, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Definitely. So I'm excited to talk some baseball with you today. And I know you've been at the soccer field all weekend, and we've been back and forth on when we can schedule this. But I'm excited to dig in. But I'm really curious about what your job looks like on a day-to-day basis. So do you mind walking through just maybe even a typical week of what all you would be doing, who you would be seeing, what you would be working on, and we'll just kind of roll from there.
Sure. I think, as the defensive coordinator for the Pirates in a normal season, I'm usually traveling in and seeing one of our affiliates for anywhere from 3 to 5 days to get a good feel on, how we're doing defensively. But let's say I'm getting ready to go in somewhere, I will, connect with the staff before as anything in particular that, maybe having some issues that I can help support them on when I get there. Or I'm usually tracking a team and following them pretty closely with, the infielders on, how they're doing, if they're showing any trends of anything or anything has popped up in any certain games. Usually I spend the morning watching every ground ball that our organization from top to bottom had for that night. And just so I feel that I'm kind of connected in a way that I'm seeing what's happening, if there's video available. And so I can get an idea of what maybe I'm walking into a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I head in, I meet with the coaches to find out, what it is I can do that I can help support them. We really want the coaches, because they're there, they're the eyes, every single day for the player. And the last thing we want is all of a sudden the coordinator to come in and kind of just move everything out of the way and starting to make things happen. If anything, I'm there to listen to the player, support the coaches, and just give my lens on maybe somebody's having a backhand issue and we can figure out maybe a different way to train it, or just keep progressing through what they've been training. So, but it's a lot of connecting and watching and following and just understanding maybe how we're going about our work to, maybe learn something or get better at something. And that's in season once we get going. But prior to, like right now, it's more of getting an idea of player plans together for coaches on a certain roster. And so the coaches, when they start to really dig into their teams, they have a foundational start of, what maybe a shortstop that we have in our organization at a particular level is needing to work on or to improve, or even what to build on from where we were last year. So that's kind of the progress right now. And kind of take it as we come. If there's issues with team defense, then, we had that, or if there's things that we implement, I will, get that call from the big leagues and then implement a certain way. We may change up a cutoff and relay or add in a bunt defense. And there's a lot going on now with shifting and shift cards. And so just making sure that we're all on the same page from top to bottom in the organization. So when guys move from level to level, it's already hard enough to move from level to level, but if we can alleviate something that makes that transition a little smoother for them, we try to find it.
I love that. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting is just thinking about all the different positions that you've seen that have grown, because it's no longer like shortstop. You go stand over there. So I think were you done playing whenever everything started to get crazy with the shifts, or was that like right at the end of your career?
It was right at the end. I think the last year I went to spring training in 2014, it was with the Washington Nationals, and they added basically a defensive guy to really start to, for some reason, finally play where we've seen the spray charts for the last however many years. And you would look at the spray charts and see that the guy is a pull hitter, and you would more so anticipate than you would to really move there. Maybe move a step or two. And then now it's, obviously evolved to where they can take you or I and how we move and understand that this is the best case scenario for you to be in this spot, that you can move the least amount of distance to make a play. So, and again, that's another aspect that is a part of our daily thing of starting to really understand what is that angle difference from where you are positioned to at contact of where the ball is hit. And if we can minimize that angle of you move the least amount of feet to go get a ground ball, then we're grading ourselves and judging ourselves on that ability. So it's totally different. It's totally wild. There was times in my career when I was the third baseman and I went out into short right to play that shift. But I did it. They chose me in that particular spot because I was a second base, shortstop, and third baseman, and so I already had that versatility. That hey, let's just use him, send him out instead of maybe moving me to short, moving the shortstop over and the second baseman out. So now we actually have three guys that are in a different spot when we can just take one and send it. So there was times where we started to feel creative in that at the end of my career, and then now it's almost like a no-brainer to pick the right person to go and play wherever. So more so, I hate to see what the scorecard looks like. You may have a 5-3, but the ball was pulled by a left-handed hitter. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. And so one of the things that I neglected to really even think about was, okay, you're over there and the ball's hit to you and you know where to go, but whenever it's not hit to you, now you have to kind of scramble around and you're no longer the third baseman, you're the second baseman. So now you have to cut off a ball from right field to go into third base. Now and just trying to envision all of those different things, because you're no longer in your set position to where you quote unquote play. And I just think cuts and relays, it was just chaos if you didn't like rep that 1,000 different times. And so that was just one of the things that I started to think about with shift. I was like, man, I wonder if they even know where to go if the ball's not hit to them. Is that something did that ever come up?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a big thing we work on is that communication and, setting up those situations to where, yeah, you have three guys on the right side and you just launch a ball down the left field line or the left center field gap. And, how are we reacting? Who's going where? And so, yeah, that's a situation where we may draw it up on the whiteboard so they see it there. Then we go out and practice it. We have to be on top of the fact that we do have utility guys who are playing everywhere, that you're going to need to know everywhere you need to be on the field. And we need to practice that. And then also understand, what does that look like when game time comes? And sometimes just because the way a ball reacts in the game, these guys have the situational awareness enough to just communicate it out and make some things happen just because of that's where the ball was at that particular time with these particular runners. And it may not be exactly how we drew it up, but at the same time, it's, you can appreciate the fact that they're playing the game and trying to get all the bases covered. But no question, it's a big part of it. Just with ground balls in the infield and communication, and then lining up for those cuts and relays. We actually had a call about it the other day just to make sure we were all on the same page going in.
I love that, and I love hearing you work through that. And another part of your job is you're evaluating these guys and trying to understand what you can do to help them. And you mentioned that earlier in the show. So whenever you're evaluating infielders, again, you played. I don't know if you played first, but you played all of the other three positions, and you played for a long time. And so I would love to hear your process and how you go about evaluating infielders. Is it back and forth questioning, or if you're even watching video? I'm sure you use analytics, but just I'd love to hear your system and your process for helping those players find the one or two things that they really need to work on a day-to-day basis.
Sure, no question. I think all of us in general, no matter who you are, we all have our particular lens or our kind of go-to. If you talk to scouts, they may be, this is the first thing I look at, or this is the first thing I look at. And you always have like a default. And I've come to understand that my default is the feet. Are we in a position to be able to react? And that's in our pre-pitch and paying attention and being focused. But are our feet, landing, and in our posture at the time to move our feet, are we landing and going? And then, because we're using our feet to get to where we need to go. And we're using our feet to be able to attack the angle at which we need to maybe get a good hop or come and get it on a short hop. And then, to me, the feet set us up to make a throw. So I start at the feet. And then I think for me, the feet are, if we're wide enough, that produces where our hands need to be. And if we're moving our feet in the right ways, then we're attacking the ball at the right angle to get the right hop. And then if we're replacing our feet in a certain way that we're going towards first, then it's going to help us, get a throw off that is as clean as possible. So for me, I go there and I see what, if we're having certain issues, whether it's another default of mine is talk about the backhand. So because I think I could probably still be working on the backhand for myself to this day. But it's like, why are we not getting there? Are we, not getting a good jump and a read on the ball? Which in a sense comes to our perception part, which is the next, for me, a big thing is, how well are we seeing it and reacting to the ball? Because if our perception and we're slower at processing, then once we land and realize we need to go, we may go fast, but it may take us a second or two not really a second, but that click to tell ourselves when to go. But once we go, are our feet getting us there, and we put them in the right spot that maybe they're not in the right spot for who you are with your backhand, and then where it's not giving you a good posture to be able to field the ball. So for me, that's where I go, and I work from there, and then try to see if ultimately that may help us with anything from turning a double play. Is our timing synced up because our feet are moving? Are we are our throws off because our feet are not aligned, or we're throwing across our body? Are we getting the in-between hop because we're not keeping our feet moving? We've stopped them. So for me, I feel that if we can get those worked out in our footwork, then I think it takes care of a lot of other things that follow it.
I love it. So one of the things that I think is an interesting debate, especially with the shift now, because you can hide players, I guess, is a nice way of putting it. And you can play guys closer to first base that you may not have had playing second base several years ago. And so one of the one of the discussions that I really find intriguing is how do we get certain players to play certain positions? And so you hear the debate all the time with guys that are really big. Can they play third base? Like, do they move well enough to be able to do so? Or if they play shortstop, do they have the arm to? They may have everything else, but they may not have the arm. And so, are there certain skills that each position has? Number one, and then I've got a follow up question for you after that. So if you and thinking about the amateur coaches that are in mind that are listening, so you're thinking youth age or high school who have several really good infielders. Are there first or where would you put certain skill sets in certain positions, or is it just like let's find our 3 to 4 best guys and then let's put them in whatever position we can to get them all on the field? How would you work through that?
That's a good question. That could go several different ways. I think right now, if you look in the game with the shifting, your third baseman can't be your third baseman anymore. That used to be the guy that just hit a lot of homers and may be the bigger dude because in shifts he's going to have to go play shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're playing that extreme left-handed shift where 3 guys are on the right side, your third baseman's moving to that shortstop position. So you're asking him now that we need you to be a shortstop. So that's in particular, like you got to make sure you're hitting him ground balls at short, turning double plays because he's going to now be active in that area. So, the lens is starting to really change on how are we doing this? And now is it even a sense where, okay, this is who we have in our organization and he may not be able to play that short, but you know what? We'll put him on the other side and kind of be that second baseman because there's another guy there where his range doesn't have to be as big as a shortstop, but with the second baseman now there, he can cover that area and the shortstop stays. So I think you look to see who you are, but if we can get them as athletic as we possibly can and move them around and give them the feel, I'm a big believer on that. I don't know if that's because I think it helped me understand just the game and know what you're getting at each position, but to also be able to allow your team to play those positions and play those shifts, it's big to try to make your guys as athletic as possible. And honestly, like if and I say that's deep because I get to my 13U team and there's a lot of questions that they're ready. They're ready to start playing certain positions and we've just got to the big field and to me, we play everybody in the infield and outfield. We'll switch them every 2 innings.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to learn the game because you know what, my son, he hasn't started to develop yet and he's 12. And so there's a lot of guys like that I can't tell you what they're going to be. They're still going to be growing and we still get, young guys at 17, 18 that are still growing and maturing that we're trying to predict who they're going to be. But it's hard for me because in a year from now, heck, I know my son's not going to grow 6 inches, but he could. And that's going to change the dynamic of who he is. And by right now spending the time and learning those positions, I think that's going to help build a foundation for these guys. And that's where I get scared where, the youth and the amateur world so worried about winning that you're playing short, you're staying short, and nobody else is getting that opportunity because for me, I didn't start playing shortstop till I was 13, 14 years old. I was fast enough to play outfield, but then when we went to the big field, I no longer could do it. The shortstop was really fast, so we switched. And then I ended up getting to play shortstop till I was 40. So I live and die on that idea of it's hard, but let's try to make them as athletic as possible to predict who they can be. And ultimately, I think they're going to show us where they need to be. But nowadays, we're trying to train our corner guys to be as athletic as our middle guys, and then kind of go from there because we're going to expect a lot of them in the infield. I hope that answers your question, but it's definitely a more dynamic activity these days in the infield.
No, for sure. It was a really hard question to answer because I could give you specific examples and maybe, and we could, but it's just with it being that broad of a question, I think you absolutely nailed it. And I'm going to love getting into some of your stuff with the amateur players, because I think it's so neat to be able to see you coach 13 and under kids and then coach big leaguers. And so it's going to be a fun conversation to be able to have with those today. But I do want to just kind of retouch that for just a second with the skills for certain positions. And so you mentioned when they get to 13, 14, maybe even in high school, you don't know what they're going to be the next year because they're going to show up and they may have grown 6 inches or gained 20 pounds. And you're like, man, okay, let's move over to third or something like that, or first. And so I want to know though, so you get these guys that are either newly drafted and they change a ton. So you're getting 16, 17, 18-year-old Latin kids who may do the same thing, or college kids, the same thing. And so do you find that there are some skills that are innate that you really can't teach? Because like Andrelton Simmons, like I I don't know if I could ever, if you could give me an unlimited amount of time with a player, and I don't know if I could ever teach some of the skills that he has, but I would love to hear your thoughts on, are there some things that guys just have by the time they get to a certain age, or even, even into college age? Or and then also, what are some that you have found that are teachable? So some that you've been like, hey, with perception action coupling and then repping these things out with block practice every single day, we were able to improve this or that. So long story short, are there some skills that you feel like are like, I don't want to say impossible to teach, but they're really built in by the time they get to 20 plus years old? And then what are some that maybe you've been able to help players overcome and get better at?
Well, I think, some of the things that when you are observing somebody that may be younger, that you're like, wow, man, like this guy, whoa, he can flat out pick it. It's just their ability to, read the hops, to be able to put themselves in a position to get that ball on the way down, or come and pick it, right off that short hop. They're doing a very good job of not getting in between, and they look comfortable with it. It's like, for us with the Pirates, Brian Hayes, I always say he makes me look like the best fungo hitter ever, because for years I've been hitting him fungo and I can't hit him a bad one. He has his great ability to move his feet and catch the ball in the right spot. And to me, I'm just like, wow, like it's impressive that you're able to so young. Now, Cabrian's been around the game for a long time with his dad playing, so I think there's a lot that goes into that, and how many ground balls he has seen in his life. But I think there are things like that, like the ability to just catch the ball, and feel comfortable in doing that where it's automatic. I try to look at. My son asked me, like, how do I judge if the other team that we're getting ready to play we've never seen is going to be good or not? And I say I watch them play catch. And if they're really thinking about catch, like really having to watch the ball, then it's not automatic for them yet. They cannot now put their focus out into the game as much as you're ready. I go, when I see that and I feel that, then I think, this is going to be a pretty good team, because they're going to catch the ball. Their fear of failure and they've moved beyond it. And so I think even with that, like there's some kids that are just catching and doing things a little better, a little earlier. And, my goal is to try to get that with these young guys. So I think there's some things that, just in the ability to, with hand-eye coordination, they're able to move on to things, when others aren't ready. And so, but I think there's ability to catch up. We've seen every kid that everybody's had growing up that was 6 foot at the age of 12, probably Duncan. And then by the time you got to your senior year in high school, he was still 6 foot and you all caught up with him. And now you're all playing at a level. You got the kid who's 12 years old throwing 75 off the mound. And now all of a sudden we're in high school and he's the third, fourth pitcher, because everybody catches up. So I believe there's a lot that can be trained. Physically, I believe there's a lot that can be improved upon. But at the same time, I think there are limitations of just who we are as far as the way we're built. You can only take your mobility, some guys, so far. You can only have so much strength so far. And I think that in time, those become the separators. Those become the separators in minor league baseball. Your ability to focus or to be able to react as you go up to higher levels, level by level. The game, they say gets faster, but meaning like the movements need to be faster. The balls are hit a little harder. The guys are running a little faster. Everything's a little crisper, and that's where you start to have separation. And you get to a point that I think you can improve, but is it enough to ultimately get you over? And that's what we do every day in the minor leagues, is try to see if we can find that. And we work at it and find new ways to train it. But I definitely think guys start quicker. And my only thing is when those guys start quicker or have a better idea of it, is to not take it for granted, but keep teaching them, because sooner or later somebody's going to be standing right next to them caught up. So
That's really good.
yeah.
So with you being a dad, and again, you get to see 13 and under players, and you get to see high school age kids, and all of these different tournaments all the time. And you get and so this one would be more geared towards like your incoming draft class or your free agents, or guys that you're first working with for the after they sign in some capacity. And you're going through all of the different things, and you've noticed potential trends that a lot of amateur players have that you wish was taught earlier. And so, for an example, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was players not looking in to see what the sign is, like the sign that the catcher's putting down, so they could potentially have an extra step on where the ball might be based on who the hitter is and where it's going to go. And so that was one thing I was like, man, I can't believe that wasn't talked about with some of the players that we saw last year. So that was interesting. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on what can player or coaches who are coaching amateur infielders, what can they do a better job of teaching? So not necessarily that you don't have to, but you think that could set them apart, and you think that would help the player immensely.
Yeah, you hit a great one right out of the chute. That's just something that I've learned in my position, and getting to play for a while, and then coming back and being in this position to teach. Is that was a lot of things I took for granted and I haven't thought about in a long time. Is understanding the first sign after two, or knowing what pitch is coming. I mean, there's been many times I'm like, are you looking in to see? And and then you're amazed that they're not anticipating. So that is a big thing that is a part of it, is thinking along inside the game like that, and trying to anticipate um, what pitch is coming, so I can start to cheat before it even happens. And there's been times in my career where I've looked in and gone, uh-oh, and turn around to the umpire and been like, be ready, here it comes. And but a lot of times I pride myself on thinking, is this going to be a slider? And they call it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, like it's definitely coming this way. So just really paying attention to that, and really learning swings and the pitches that your pitcher has, and what does that produce. It's can you teach your infielders to observe the swing, or when a ball gets past you, think in the way of, how did I not read that right? Did this guy swing with that pitch? How did I miss it? I felt like if I dove for a ball, then I had a misread before the pitch even happened. But that is a big part of it. I think one thing that we really notice on the draft guys that come in, and more and more colleges these days are playing on turf. And now we don't have many turf fields in the minor leagues. And so um, there's a new way of reading the balls and understanding the way the ball is bouncing off of grass and into dirt, and that there's there's particular parts of the dirt that can cause a bad hop. And so that's a learning curve for a lot of guys where we could wait back and field a ball, and now it's a totally different aspect of it. So that's a big thing that we have to get them going, is to be more aggressive and have some rhythm to first base. Instead of just stopping and catching because it got to you a little faster. Can we practice that rhythm and that anticipation, and still coming and getting the ball because everybody's playing on turf? My younger brother at the university, they got turf, and I met the AstroTurf guy, and I told him, "Thank you. You've created job security for me." And and I get that. I mean, my brother, they need it. They need to be able to play games, and they get a lot of games rained out. And I think it's great. But in a roundabout way, it gives us tasks at the beginning is to help them with that. But really, to me, it's just really thinking the game, playing the game. In that regard, the game inside the game is, I think, a part that's not taught, and communicating with your teammates, and after plays or after the inning. I know a lot of guys now play on travel teams where they go to showcase tournaments, and I'm one player that's coming in playing for this team, and then I'm out. We have to teach them how to be teammates, how to communicate with each other and rely on each other, and really pay attention to what each other's strengths are. If I know my third baseman goes good to his left, I may not have to play in the hole as much. And so really paying attention to those kind of things, and who your teammates are, and is something that we really have to spend some time on and educating them. But definitely, if we can start doing some shift work deeper in the hole, stuff like that gets them ready for just some different angles in the way we train. I'm sure we're going to talk about that, but even the ways that we train now, past the block training, that really, I think, is a good way to catch up to a lot of skills.
I really like that a lot. And I want to just to rewind just a little bit before we get into the skills and drills and all of those things. And let's talk a little bit about teaching the game within the game. And a friend of mine has this theory to where we're losing players early because it's boring. And he feels very strongly on if we can teach the game within the game, like you're talking about, and teaching just the way that we almost teaching them how to think like a coach and to see everything that's going on, then it won't be as boring for them. And ever since he said that, I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, that would, that's kids are usually they're fading out in between pitches, especially younger kids, and they're not understanding what's going on, or what's something that I could say here, what's something that could happen here, and just going through that. And some guys do just because they truly love it, and some guys don't because they don't know how to, and they don't know that the game within the game, and they've never been taught to even think like that. And so I'd love to hear how you're going about going over this with your son's group, and just kind of some different things that you're teaching those guys to look for, to see, to work on, to think about, and just all of that, either in between pitches or just during the game itself.
Yeah, no doubt. We identified there's 12 to 15 seconds in between pitches, and so what we ask of our team is, number one, what do I do if the ball's hit to me? And then number two, where do I go if the ball is not hit to me? And, that's where we're trying to start, and teaching them, especially them moving to the big field, is to have an understanding of where to go and be in the right spots to what we call eliminate the snowball fights, eliminate the balls being just turned around and thrown everywhere. We spend a lot of time on the little league fields of telling them, even though they can throw it from left field to second base with no problems, to hit your cutoff man. And, we're talking about playing catch. And the reasons why is then when we get out on the field after we played catch and getting loose one day, and I walked him around the field. I was like, when they were in the little league and we practiced on a big field, and I had them meet me at third. And I'm like, you just long tossed from a distance. And I was like, could you say that it's where I'm at right now at third base and there's first base? Is that as far as you long tossed? And they're like, yeah. And I go, well, this is your regular play next year. And so we walked to each position, and then we walked to the outfield, and I'm like, who can throw it to second from here? And I'm like, so do you understand why hitting our cutoffs is important? And then it's like, that's why we need to play catch, that it's important to hit the next guy so he can turn around and hit the next guy. And so we tried to build it up in that way. So now when we're in these positions, and we're working on stuff at practice, it's just simply asking questions of, why would I want you here? Or why would you be there? And to start talking through it, and then also put in a situation that, we have a pitcher who, throws the ball inside to everybody, and it's a right-handed hitter. More than likely, where's this ball going to go? And so you're trying to teach them to understand that where I can use my job in analytics, that 90% of the ground balls by right-handed hitters are pulled. And so be ready for that when you have a right-handed hitter. So start thinking about that. And we try to build off of what happened, the mistake, or if it went well, like see where you're at, learn from why you're there and how the ball came to you. And if it didn't, then where did the ball go and where should you have been? Where would you be next time? Instead of just trying to really, me seeing that I have a good feeling this guy's going to hit it there just via my experience and start moving everybody, I'm willing to sacrifice that mistake, that 2 runs to go in where a ball gets past our shortstop because he's holding the runner when he shouldn't be. I need that experience to happen, because if I take that away from him and I tell him where to be, then he's never going to learn. And so they truly have to, I feel, that's where you're going to learn more from and that's where they say, learn from our mistakes. And I believe it. And so that we use those scenarios, and then we start, talking about things and the game within the game and picking guys off and why you're doing this and why you're doing that and who you can use. You can use the third baseman to help you with first base. So then it starting to say all these little things that's going on that you don't see on TV. I think, when I say you can use your third baseman for the pickoff, then the third baseman feels like, I have more worth here. Mm-hmm. And they become more involved and they get more excited. And so, then my coaches are like, how do we do this? And so then it's fun. It's fun because there's a lot more going on. And besides just the boring old game of baseball, which, I can't argue with people. I get it sometimes.
No, I absolutely love that. And again, you're, for me, I feel like you're freeing them up to have fun and play fearlessly almost.
Well, that's what we would love. I mean, I think, I played the game with a lot of anxiety and stress, no question about it. I was out to prove them wrong or fight back. Or when it went right, I was happy and I was like mad because I got them. But then I would fight back when it didn't happen. And now I'm in the game because I want them to play as authentically and as free as possible. And we talk about, risking and making mistakes, but we have to, as coaches, really give them that environment. If we want a kid to learn how to steal bases better, and we're in a game and we tell him to steal, and then he steals at some crazy time and he gets thrown out. Well, we can't jump on him then, because then now we're going to take that fear away. And so then that's just my time to talk to you and ask you questions and learn about the situation more than your steal jump. But if we're asking these guys to risk, then I can't penalize you if you're showing me that you're giving me the effort. I'll penalize you if the effort's not there, because that's one of our non-negotiables. But I'm not going to penalize you for something that you're trying to do and see if you can improve on. And that's a thing you try to do. And for me, if it's not happening for the player, I've got to first go, okay, what am I doing that's not explaining this right? How are they not getting it? It must be the way I'm saying it or displaying it or demonstrating it. So I'm going to figure it out first before I just finally, cause fear in a player not to make a mistake. I don't want that. And that's one of the biggest things for me is I want them to play as free as possible. Even these guys in the minor leagues that are coming in, even in the big leagues, like I want you to play as free and authentically as possible. And truly let's just get better by the things that we can build on and learn from. So
Oh, it's really good, and I love hearing that. Have you always been this self-reflective, or did you start doing that whenever you started to get into coaching?
I was always very, very aware of things going on around me. And, I think I always tell everybody I have a master's in reading body language. And that was only to try to find ways to be better and not screw up. I'd take a round of batting practice and look over and be like, okay, that must have been a good round. And so I always had this ability to understand my surroundings, but then, I started to learn that how to use this in a better way. And you had Dr. Bass on not long ago, and he's been very instrumental in understanding our position as a coach. He's really helped me with that and how to have a lens of the player in front of me. And, because we've talked about how I felt and how I dealt with it and how I don't want that for a player. Well, okay, well, that can look like this. And it starts with um, observing yourself and understanding, how you may be saying something, how you're standing. So I after everything we do, I mean, I run it through my own filter probably too many times. I'll leave a practice wondering, and then now I have no problem asking, how was that drill? Did you like it? I thought it was going to look like this. What can we do to make it better? I had no problem being vulnerable in that situation. Um, and so I think it helps me, and I think it helps them, and I think it helps us in overall building our relationship to work together. So
No, I really like that, and I definitely encourage the listeners, if they haven't listened to Dr. Bass, his episode was fantastic, and he actually put us in touch, which I really do appreciate. And what he did want me, this may be a little bit of, he wants to hear your thoughts on this, but he did want me to ask you about the sports psych side, and it seems like you've put a lot of thought into it, and so how have you been able to take your just your experience as a elite player and been able to use that and what you've learned, from Dr. Bass and Doc Holliday and all of those guys from the sports psych side, and really merge it into how you're coaching guys every day. But mainly, how have you taken them and they don't just teach theory, they teach obviously stuff that works, but you're also a former elite player, and so you've gotten to see both sides of, hey, I did this as a player, you guys are talking about this as sports psychologists, and then I'm able to take both of those and invest this into the player. What are some different things that you have been able to take from both sides and put into the players that you're working with every day?
yeah, great question, and that is a Dr. Bass question for sure. So what I have learned and what I've tried to take my experience and being a player is when I have conversations with Dr. Bass or any of our mental conditioning coaches, I always look back at my career and think, when did this take place? And and then I'd sit there and be able to understand, ooh, that's when I was going good, or that's when I had a good season, or that's when I had a kind of a bad season or a bad run. Um, and so that really and to me, that helped me make sense of it all, to be able to put it into my own life And therefore, then I can turn around and be like, okay, if I was feeling this as a player because this is a way I was being coached, then these guys that are across from me are the same. And so I think, as a big example is like internal or external focus. When I really started to get a grasp of that and looking back and be like, yeah, man, I mean, the years I kind of hit well, the hitting coach always gave me targets to go at. I never was like internal with any mechanic. And then the other years, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I worked on my back leg drive forever, and I could never get, my front side strong. So I could remember the words that became associated with these seasons. And so that was just even more buy-in for myself. And so then they've done a really good job of giving me words to feelings and giving me the science to feelings or experiences that I've had. And then I've tried to turn around and go, boom, I'm going to use that. And then we've started to work together. It's just like, if I need to explain why we're doing this, which I think is extremely valuable for players, and it's something that's not traditional, I have no problem. Dr. Bass, come on over here. Okay, here's what we're looking to do. Here's why, and then here's why it's going to help you. And an example of that is we'll use softballs, baseballs, and little mini baseballs that are just as hard as a baseball for Tao training. And we learn miles per hour. Our brain sees things by the size of them. Like if you and I are getting ready to cross the street and a car was coming, we'd be able to, our brain is judging how big that car is getting as it's coming to us. And if we feel like, man, it's coming to us bigger and bigger and bigger, we've put mile per hour on it. Like that thing is coming fast. So we won't cross the street. So that's how we judge things. And then for us to work that muscle with a baseball that comes at us, we're going to get something that's bigger and smaller, and then also something the same in a baseball, and hit you ground balls with it, to feel those different sizes so your eyes can work that particular muscle. So then when you got regular ground balls coming at you all the time, it seems a little slower, seems a little simpler. And, to me, that's learning, from somebody that's learned the brain and the sport psych of it all, mashing all those together into really helping the player out, has been fun. I mean, I love it. I can't get enough of it. And I keep telling them, like, when you have something or something else comes, like, you better come knocking on this door, because we'll try to put it in play. And that's where I'm fortunate to have a 13U team, because little do they realize that they're the little science lab, trying some things before I bring them out. But it's awesome. I mean, they've the external focus, internal focus is just one, and then the motor learning part of the Tao training is just another one. But to the sports psych is huge, and I love everything about it.
So you're saying, is it towel training? Tao
Tao,
training?
T A
Like,
O, yeah, sorry,
okay. Yeah,
T A
tell
O.
me a little bit about that besides the different balls, and explain, what Tao training is, because I'm really intrigued by this.
Yeah, that's where your eyes adjust to and predict miles per hour by the size of something coming at you or going away. It's like that car now, it's past us, and as we see it, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we know, it's going away from us. So if we can train by how a baseball comes at us, that we see, if it's coming at us faster, then it's getting bigger. And so that's how we can move our feet to be able to judge miles per hour, to be able to judge how to catch it. So we'll get those 3-size baseballs and hit fungos at different speeds, so their eyes are seeing different. Almost in the sense an overtraining of with the softball, and an undertraining, with the little baseball, to work that muscle to be able to prepare better for, judging a regular baseball coming at us in a game. So
Love that.
we get some funky looks, but I think and this is why I always bring Dr. Bass out there to explain it probably a little bit cleaner than I can. But if we get them to understand that principle and they think, oh, this is going to help me, then let's break them out all day long. And guys have really started to adapt to it, um, and that's being able to be uh, understanding of the principle, um, and to me it totally makes sense. And so let's do it. Let's see what kind of feedback we get.
Fantastic. Is there any other, and you've gotten to really see the transition from when you played and you started in minor league baseball to now, to where it's shifted a lot. And are there any other ways that you've really started to blend that science side and the tech side with the art that you learned growing up, and that you're continuing to? Because I think coaching is an art and a science. We have to take scientific principles and blend them with the art that we use, and the art of communication and of teaching and all of these things. Is there any other ways that you've been able to do that? And I'm sure there's multiple, but I'd love to hear one or even a few, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think a big one that, and you had said the words earlier, block training compared to random training. um, I think there's time for them all. But what we're learning is your block training is your feel good training is, a good way as a warm up decrement. Like if we get down on our knees and we're working on some short hops, if we have a 10-minute time frame, always before that may be 5 minutes of our 10 minutes. Well, now it's only should be 1 minute, because it's not really giving us anything that's going to really prep us for a game. Because then, in the way we learn is, you need some sort of stimulus to be able to identify the action. You have a response to that, and then you move. And so that's how a game is. You have this A, B, and C type of activity coming at you that you're trying to understand your environment. And some of the block training may only train the A and the C. And so then when we're just taking ground balls that we know are coming at us, that we are going to know that maybe even going to our forehand or going to our backhand, we're not really training that in a game. I don't know if a ball is coming to me and I'm going to have to react. So there's parts of it that, yeah, we may need to slow it down and work on the backhand to get the feel of it. But what we ultimately need to do is put them in a fire of as close to game like we can, to train all three to be able to be ready for how we react in the game. That if we're training for those pregame, then when game comes, we're not all of a sudden going to go, oh, where did part B come from? We haven't seen that in months. So we're really pulling back and saying, okay, we're going to give you a few minutes of the feel good. And then, our hitting a drop ball, which there's a coach that's flipping to us and we're taking a normal swing as the fungo guy, that the player can see the ball in flight, see the hitter take a full swing, and the way the ball comes off the bat is going to be more like a game than it is I'm tossing it up and hitting a fungo. So we're getting timing and rhythm, and then we're getting the ability to get the reads off the bat. Now, we may have to slow it back down and say, okay, we've gone too fast, too far. Let's give him a few feel good to get some rhythm, to see where he needs to catch it. But then we're going to go back. I think that's been a big transition. Besides, we get a lot of guys who come in from college that are used to 100 ground balls in 10 minutes. And we'll do our drop ball situation to where we may just have a third baseman, but to make it better, we'll put a shortstop. So now they don't know which one is going to get the ground ball. We may get less physical ground balls, but we're getting just as many mental reps as in anticipation, seeing that swing with that ball in that particular zone is going to third and not me. So I'm learning anticipation. I'm not just going, well, I don't have to anticipate this because it's coming to me. So there's always that element that we can be training towards the game. And then to make it even better, we'll add a second baseman. And to make it as best as we possibly can, we got our first baseman. So the ability for now our college guys to come in to understand that I may not get 100 ground balls, but I got really good work. And I really got, because in games, we don't get 100 ground balls. When you go play golf, you hit the ball, it's a bad shot, you drop the next one, and you hit it good. When's that ever happen in golf, right? We've already learned part of what we're supposed to anticipate. So now we're just fixing one aspect of it instead of in real world, it's all three aspects. So we're really trying to gravitate towards that and get the player to understand that it's more about the mental preparation, the reaction, and seeing how you respond in that reaction to train than just doing your staple. We're going to go do this and you work through it. And there's less decision making as a part of it. So.
No, I really like that a lot. Do you ever get, especially you're working with guys who, they're literally, in a lot of cases, it is a job for them and their jobs are on the line. Mm-hmm. Do you ever get any pushback from trying new things like that?
Sure, we do. And I think when I think of that, when I think of feedback like that, I think then I'm not explaining it well enough. And so I got to find a different way to explain it. Or I may have a player come out and I ask, what do you want to work on today? And he tells me something that may not exactly be the thing that I think he needs to be working on. And I'll say, okay, I'll give you some of that, but hey, I was doing this drill the other day. I think it may be helpful for you. So I'll give you some of what you want. And then let's just try this at the end and see what you think. And so they're going, oh, sweet. I got to do mine. Sure. I'll check to see what he has. And so then I'll do the drill that may be new or different. And then I'll just simply ask him, like, how was that? What'd you have on that? I really think this helped this for you in my observation. Or, hey, which part of this do you think what you did or what we just did is going to get you better ready for that game at 7:00? And then allow them to think about it and then go, all right, it's something to build on, and then the next time we come out, we'll start building on that. And we know that it's not just going to be a, hey, boom, we're going to switch it. But if we connect why it's helping them and then allow them to see it and then work through it and discuss it with them, then I think we're going to have a better opportunity to change it. Because ultimately, the world we live in, we need to know why we're doing something and how it's going to help us. And do you care enough about him to find out why we're doing this for him to get him better? And you have that combination, I think you can get that shift a little bit better than what we may normally get.
I love that. I love that explanation too. So with that, I've got a couple of quick hitter questions that I'd love to hit you with before we go. And the first one is, what's something that you've learned lately that you were really excited about?
I'm really excited about doing competition drills, game drills that have the player doing what they need to do and learning what they need to do without them feeling like they're doing it. It's something I'm really looking forward to doing and adding more in. It's just creating competition and creating games that they're having some fun, yet absolutely getting after it. And they don't realize how well they're getting after it until we talk about it afterwards and how well they're getting their skills that they need to get.
Okay, it may be the lightning section, but you've caught my interest. Can you give us an example?
So I think, like, if I say for infielders, I put a bucket on first base and I put a net behind it. And however many times we hit the bucket, we're competing against each other. May get something, but the net behind it is also, hey, a miss, but this net is still the first base's range of getting it. But they all want to hit a bucket that's on top of a trash can at first base. and they compete against each other. I mean, that's just something simple. And I'm going to put a time on them because I know if they're going to take their time to really try to get a good throw off, they're going to take too much time and the runner's going to be safe. So I'm going to tell them it's a 4-3 runner. So we're going to hit a ground ball and they're going to come get it. And then we're going to work on our throws. So that's just one way that they're going to work on their throws in the heat of the moment and also get some fun reward out of it. And I'll even let them pick who wins and or what happens when they win. We did a competition the other night, hitting wise. You hit it between these lines, between the groups, whoever has the most. And I put the lines in gap to gap, and they started to really drive the ball. We were pulling off the ball, bigger in life, and trying to pull everything and be all cool guy hitting homers. And so I gave them this task, asked them if they wanted to compete, and they got they got to pick the points system, and then at the end of the day, they got to choose what the penalty was. And I think the penalty for them was the losers had to run to center field and back, and the winners just thought it was the greatest thing known to mankind. But we worked on staying through the ball, really getting some backspin, really driving the ball and not pulling off. So that is what I'm looking to hopefully start building on. And I'm excited with some of our coaches and our ideas that we're going to continue to build on that.
Oh, that's great. Next question, after the excited question, what is something that you've changed your mind about either since you played or recently?
There's no one way to field a ground ball. I used to think you had to do everything you could to use two hands to get in front of the ball. And it was quickly brought to my attention that then how would I tell Clint Barmas to field a ground ball, who fields every ground ball with one hand? And I started to realize it's more about where you catch it instead of how you catch it, and then start to really appreciate how everybody's different and they have their own ways of doing things. Even with hitting, like, or your ready position, your stance is different, but as long as you get to where you need to go. So that's what I say with the ready position. It can be different, but as long as you're getting to where you need to go, then you can be different. So not everybody is a traditional way. I've learned that a lot since I started coaching.
No doubt. I'm sure we could spend an entire episode over things that we've learned since we started coaching, huh?
Sure. No doubt.
And then finally, it's whenever, people are listening to this show, or any show in general, they love to hear what books you're reading or what books have positively affected your life. So they don't necessarily have to be baseball specific, but if you could buy one book for every person that's listening to us that you knew would make an impact on them, what book would that be?
I just read this book. It's like a 50, 60 pager. It's called Keep Chopping Wood by Kevin DeShazo. I hope I say his name right. It's just about doing the process, trusting the process. The little analogy in it was you chop wood now and you let it sit, because the wood that you're cutting down now is wet and it needs to dry out. So you're chopping the wood now for the fire later. So it's the work you're putting in now for the payoff later. And it's the process, as my wife would say, it's grain by grain. So keep chopping wood, I think, really pertains to anything that we're doing in life, is to keep trusting the process and doing the little things day by day. So you're ready for that fire when it comes.
I love that. And so finally, I'm going to mute myself and just let you talk to our listeners and just kind of leave them with some parting notes, if you will. So is there anything else that you'd like to tell them before you go?
Sure. I think a big thing that I'd love for us to tell our youth is it's not what they do. It's just what they do. It's not who they are. They're playing this game. I think we're getting caught up in making a job of this game at a very young age. And they get caught up that who they are, how they play is all a direct reflection of how much they're going to be loved. And I see it. I see it in my own team that a good game or a bad game is going to determine the mood of their families and what dinner is going to be like that night. And I would just really hope that parents are proud of who their kids are for what they're doing, but it's not who they are. I think it's a big separation that can really happen is a lot of kids are going out and playing to make their family and their mom and dad proud. And first and foremost, I want them to play to make themselves proud, and then the rest takes care of itself. So they do the work to make themselves proud. They're not doing the work to make mom and dad happy. They're not getting 4 hits in a game, and that's going to make mom happy. And I go 0 for 4. I'm scared to ride home with dad in the car. I just wish that we could truly have that understanding that regardless of what happens, they're going to be loved, and that you're there to support them. That is a big foundational problem I see in the youth, and I really wish that we could start trending in the other direction.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, which could include Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please share it on social media to help get the word out. Once again, thank you for joining us.